Welcome back to Fandom on Demand. So today I want to talk about Stargate Atlantis. I don't know what it is about me. For some reason I tend to like spin-offs more than their parent shows. I like Angel better than Buffy, I like Frasier better than Cheers, and I like Atlantis more than I like SG-1. So far. To be fair, I've only just started working my way through SG-1. I know, I'm sorry, but 10 seasons is kind of daunting. So for those of you who don't know what the Stargate is, it's basically it opens a wormhole in space. Or, well, yeah, space, I guess. I don't know sciencey terms, and, you know, the technobabble tends to go on a bit. Basically, you can travel from one place to another at great distances away, and our heroes use it to travel between planets and sometimes galaxies. So the premise of Stargate Atlantis is they find a way to get to the lost city of Atlantis, which not only is real, but it is not on Earth. In fact, it's not even in this galaxy. It's in the Pegasus galaxy. But the people going there know that it might be a one-way trip because they're not going to have enough power to just go right back through the wormhole. And so they're not really sure if they're going to be able to reestablish contact with Earth or not, but their explorers are going to give it the old college try anyway. Leading this expedition is Dr. Elizabeth Weir. I don't have a whole lot to say about her at the moment, and I'll kind of get into that later. Accompanying her is Major John Shepard. He's kind of a last-minute tag-along because they find out he has a very strong ATA gene. And that's a whole separate long story, but to sum up, the ATA gene means that you can work the ancient technology. It will respond to you. So he gets to go along, and he quickly becomes the military commander of Atlantis as well because Colonel T-1000 gets killed off in pretty short order. Then we have Dr. Rodney McKay. He is a genius and an asshole, and I love him. If people hate him, I completely understand that. He can be extremely obnoxious, but I love him. I find him endearing. Then we have Lieutenant Aiden Ford. He is only around for one season, so I wouldn't get too attached. And finally, Dr. Carson Beckett. And Carson is honestly the living embodiment of a cinnamon roll that's too good and pure for this world. He is the sweetest person ever. And once they get to the Pegasus Galaxy, they meet the last main character, Tayla, warrior princess. And that's just the general overview of the series. So I was originally just going to do a top 10 video like I did for Due South. But instead, there's just a lot of episodes I want to talk about right now because I just finished watching it for the second time. So I'm going to break it down like this. I'm going to do 5 videos, 1 video per season, and then I'm going to talk about my top 5 favorite episodes of that season. Got it? Cool. Alright, so season 1 is kind of different from the other seasons because for 2 main reasons. One, they are basically cut off from Earth in season 1, so they've got dwindling supplies. They're kind of relying on trading with people to get things that they need to survive, and the main antagonists of this series, the Wraith, are closing in on them. And the second reason it's different is Ford. Normally, or through the other 4 seasons, Shepard's team is McKay, Tayla, and Ronan. But Ronan is not around in season 1. Instead, we have Aiden Ford. And he's not a bad character, really. In fact, he's got an innocence and an optimistic quality that none of the other characters have, and that's kind of nice. But I guess for me, the team just doesn't really gel until Ronan joins them. So before we get started, a couple of episodes that didn't quite make the cut. Rising, Part 1 and 2, Poisoning the Well, and Suspicion. With all of that out of the way, here are my top 5 favorite episodes of Season 1, in no particular order. Number 5, The Defiant One. So anytime I get an episode where Shepard and McKay team up, I'm gonna be entertained. It's a fairly simple plot. Shepard and Rodney check out a planet along with a couple of dead men walking. They're there because there's a downed Wraith ship and they want to check it out. Unfortunately, there is also still a Wraith hanging around. And this was back in the days when one Wraith was a legitimate threat, and, you know, it's not like they can just pop them off left and right like they do in the later seasons. And I really like it because Shepard gets to show off his general badassery and intelligence. He could have been in Mensa, you know. As he fights with the Wraith for control of the puddle jumper. And Rodney gets to show off some heroics in this episode too and prove that he can rise to the occasion even when there's nothing sciencey he can contribute. He's terrified, and that's what I love about Rodney, is he's very clear that he's always terrified, but he does it anyway. So he goes out and he makes a stand with Shepard, and it's just a really nice character moment, and it's a really nice moment that develops their friendship too. Solid stuff. Number 4, 38 minutes. So I love plots like this. A few characters stuck with very few resources on a very tight time limit, and they have 1 or 2 problems to solve. And this is really the first team episode where they actually go off to a planet and come back, although you don't get a whole lot of the planet stuff. It's mostly in flashbacks. But this is really the first time that Shepard has got his crew and they have to work together. And fittingly enough, they're working together to save his life. He's got an Eratus bug attached to his neck, and gosh darn it, the little thing just will not let go. The Eratus bug will become more important in later seasons for various plot reasons, but for now, they're just searching for a way to get it to let go. They can't cut it off, they can't shoot it off, they can't burn it off. It's not coming off. To make matters worse, they are all stuck in the puddle jumper, which has lodged inside the Stargate, or halfway into the Stargate, and they only have 38 minutes until the wormhole closes, and they're basically all going to die anyway. It's a tight episode with elements that come into play throughout the rest of the series, and there's some nice early team bonding there too. Number 3, Before I Sleep. Right away, this episode has got 2 things working against it for me. 1, it's an Elizabeth episode. Elizabeth is dull, and I'm not particularly fond of her. I mean, I think she does a good job when she's in the leadership role. I do find her believable as an effective diplomat, but man, when it actually focuses on her, I struggle. I struggle not to zone out. I'm sorry. And the second thing it has going against it is an alternate universe episode. And in general, I don't like alternate universe episodes. There are some exceptions, like Mirror Mirror in Star Trek, but it's typically what they usually are is a character, for whatever reason, ends up in an alternate timeline, and he's the only one who remembers the correct timeline or correct universe, whatever, and is basically trying to convince the other characters that he knows them, he or she knows them, that they're friends, they're coworkers, they're blah, 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 blah. And it's like watching a pilot again. You know what I mean? Where you know what's going on and you're just waiting for the characters to catch up. And it's so frustrating to me. But this episode is not that. The crew is exploring the city and they find an old woman in stasis. And she has quite the story to tell. Turns out she's actually Elizabeth from a different timeline. It's a really fascinating look into what might have been if Atlantis had never risen. There's really not much plot or action going on in the present. Our characters are just listening to her tell her story. And I like that. And I like their reactions to the things that she says, and especially when they learn each of their fates, which range from funny to pretty poignant. And everyone died in the other timeline except Elizabeth. It's a slower paced episode. It was kind of a nice break in the middle of season 1 from all the action going on. Number 2, Underground. I really don't have a whole lot to say about this one. I mostly put it on the list because it's an introduction to the Janai. A group believed to be simple farmers are revealed to be a pretty fierce military power. Sort of. And this episode sums up the Janai's entire run. They're sometimes tentative allies with inevitable betrayal. Unfortunately, they kind of just fizzled out in the last couple seasons of the series to just nothing. But in the first 3 seasons, I enjoyed it every time they popped up. And number 1, The Storm and the Eye. This 2-parter alone makes the entire first season worth the watch. So there's a massive, massive storm headed for Atlantis, and it's going to cause some pretty serious damage unless our heroes can get the shields up on time. So Taylor, Ford, and Beckett evacuate the Athosians on the mainland, while Shepard, Elizabeth, and McKay stick around to try and get the shields up. Unfortunately, the Janai show up, and with Rodney and Elizabeth taken hostage, it's up to Shepard to save the day. And by that I mean he straight up murders like 60 people. And he does it with relative ease too. Okay, so maybe the Janai aren't quite as formidable as I just made them out to be. But seriously, Shepard is a stone-cold badass here. This is a guy who's generally pretty easygoing, but if you push him too hard, he can get chilling. Even so, my favorite moment has got to go to Taylor for just kicking the crap out of Sora. It's so satisfying to watch. These episodes brought the show to another level in my opinion, and it's easily the highlight of season 1. And that is it for season 1. there's likable characters, there's fun plots, and a really cool setting, and that makes Stargate Atlantis one of my favorite sci-fi shows. I will see you for season 2.